The one question that everyone has on their minds right now for CD Projekt Red is, of course, when the hell can we expect Cyberpunk 2077? It's been well over 5.5 years since the game's first teaser trailer, the CGI one, and though we did finally get to see the game in action at E3 2018, a trailer for members of the public and a behind-closed-doors presentation for members of the press, it would seem as though the game is still some ways away. This is especially apparent after CD Projekt Red went on record to say during E3 2018 that the game was still in pre-alpha stages, noting how the E3 demo was the most polished part of the game they had right now. Mike Pondsmith also relayed in a mini interview that I did with him that we'll have to wait a few years while assuring that the wait will be worth it. So yeah, it is safe to say that gamers will have to hold out until at least 2020, I would say, before they can finally get their hands on the game. Now, that's not stopping anyone from wondering just what exactly CD Projekt Red meant when they said that the game is still in pre-alpha. How much of the game is actually built, essentially? Well, turns out that the studio did manage to provide an answer in that regard during an interview that one of the developers participated in with website Engadget recently during Gamescom. Now, before they got to that, one thing that producer Richard Borzymowski addressed was some of the criticism out there regarding how the latest trailer took place during the day and how everything looked too bright for Cyberpunk. Engadget even pointed out how William Gibson, one of the most prominent writers for the cyberpunk genre and one of the authors who inspired Mike Pondsmith's cyberpunk tabletop RPG world, joined the criticism by tweeting the following: "The trailer for Cyberpunk 2077 strikes me as Grand Theft Auto skinned over with a generic 80s retro future, but hey, that's just me." In response to all that, here's how Richard responded. "We know how to create beautiful scenery in the night in Night City, like awesome Blade Runner terrain aspects. But creating Cyberpunk as an open world game with a day and night cycle, we knew we would have to build Night City in a fashion which will look cool in the daylight as well. This was a bigger challenge to us than night, and we just opted to go with that and make a trailer in the daylight, which pushed us farther." Furthermore, during Gamescom's behind-the-scenes presentation of Cyberpunk 2077, the studio concluded the demo by showing a glimpse of what Night City will look like during nighttime, and so far all the impressions I've read were impressed with the more Blade Runner-like aesthetic that the evening evoked. I'll also add that sure, Cyberpunk 2077's daytime aesthetics might be brighter than some Cyberpunk fans might be used to, but this is Mike Pondsmith's vision of Cyberpunk, and if you've rummaged through the tabletop source material, then you'll know that vibrancy and fashion and all these different things are very important to this particular vision of the genre. From there, Richard talked about how the punk in Cyberpunk not only stands for rock and roll, sex, drugs, and whatnot, but also for a fight against the system, while also noting how the overarching story of 2077 won't be about saving the world or about destroying the system, but rather about a much more personal story, which is what cyberpunk stories often tend to be. Now, here's the best part. When inquired about how far 6 years of development has gotten them, Engadget's article relayed, quote, "Cyberpunk 2077 has been in development for at least 6 years, and its team recently hit a major milestone. The entire game is playable from start to finish. It doesn't have all of the proper assets, playtesting, or bug fixes in place, but seeing the story come together is a critical step in the development process," Borzymowski said. In other words, the basic infrastructure is in place, and while the game still has a long way to go when it comes to filling in content, enough work has been done that the overall story is there in playable format, which is pretty significant. Seeing the game progress to this point has also given the team a morale boost, with Richard stating, quote, "It gives you the answers to all your doubts. It just feels great." Now, I would guess that whether the game will be completed by 2020 or if they will stretch development beyond that will depend on how much besides the basic main quest they plan to add. One of the things that made Witcher 3 such a stellar experience was its myriad of side quests and smaller stories that fleshed out the world, and CD Projekt Red has already expressed that Cyberpunk 2077 will be no different on that front. Not to mention that Cyberpunk as a genre lends itself to sort of street-level stories, and you as a character are also essentially a small cog in a vast machine, rather than someone destined for greatness or whatever, so I'd imagine that side quests will play an even more pivotal role in 2077 than they did in Witcher. Depending on how many of those they're planning to add, how long they'll take to make, and how far they plan to go when it comes to furnishing the world, basically, yeah, development could stretch for any number of years. For now, though, I would say that 2020 is still a safe bet, with 2021 being the worst case scenario. It is still a long wait, but hey, Rome wasn't built in a day, and after the gameplay that I saw at E3 2018, after the level of ambition that was displayed, I'm more than happy to give them all the time they need. With that, I would like to end this news update. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoy my content and would like to support this channel directly, consider donating on Patreon. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.